Story 1. The worst mistakes include things like drinking and driving, overdosing at concerts, and alcohol poisoning.
I already had two of those covered as a teenager.
To this day, I'm surprised I didn't cover them as a teen.
I had my kids at 27 and 29. Don't regret it for 1 second. Definitely nowhere near the dumb shit I did in my early 20s.
Story 2. Comparing your behind-the-scenes life to everyone else's highlight reel. You see friends going on European trips and buying new cars on credit, so you feel behind and start digging your own debt hole just to keep up. 10 years later, you're still paying for a vacation you don't even remember, and they're filing for bankruptcy.
As an older millennial, if you trust yourself to pay off a credit card in full every month, it can help you build credit that'll be useful in your 30s. You can even get perks like points for purchases and stuff. But if you can't pay it off in full every month, it will absolutely destroy you. You could open one just for purchases you know you must buy, like gas and groceries, and still watch your nickels and dimes. That way, you're paying it off as part of what you would normally buy and building credit.
It feels painful to swipe, but I use credit cards now and just make sure to pay them off every month. For example, a Costco card. I usually get around $400 to $600 in cash back. And then the actual Costco check is around $300. The same goes for the traps of buying small things or just what you need at the time, like toilet paper and so on. That said, I only do this for necessities. Forget vacations and that sort of thing with this stuff. I made that mistake for a trip to Mexico in my 20s, so I have some debt trauma because of it.
Cashback is probably the most immediate benefit. And yeah, if you don't already have the cash, don't put it on the card, even if you're getting paid tomorrow. And putting a vacation on it? Damn, I believe that traumatized you. It's scary just thinking about it. I feel like young people don't realize how absurdly aggressive the interest rates on credit cards are, roughly 30%. I know I didn't realize that when I was in my 20s. With rates like those, if you don't pay it off aggressively, it can easily get out of hand and compound on itself quickly.
Story 3. Not taking life seriously enough or taking it too seriously. Gotta find the perfect balance to keep going at a healthy pace. Story 4. Not taking care of their bodies and letting the weight creep up. For fuck's sake, people. I'm 35 and in shape now, but my lord, I wish I had done this sooner. I hurt.
Yeah, I was in shape in my early 20s, but I let it go during COVID, and now in my 30s, I'm fucking paying for it. If I had a time machine, the first thing I'd do is go back to 25 and tell that bitch to get in the gym and stay there.
I've been over 3 hills twice. I'm not going back again. The pain in my knees, getting winded just putting on my shoes, dizzy spells just standing up, none of that anymore.
Lifting weights changed my life. I'm not a gym bro, and I still have work to do, but I was 20 pounds overweight and the pounds just stripped right off me. Lifting weights increases your metabolism. I didn't know that when I started out, and I saw a great difference in my body in just 3 months, let alone after 6 months.
Story 5. Honestly, people think they have unlimited time. They waste their early 20s not building skills, money, or good habits because they think life starts later. Then boom, the late 20s hit and reality slaps hard.
10,000,000%. I had this mentality, but now at 26, I'm actively trying to undo those missteps, and it's tougher now.
It's weird because life is so scheduled before then, with things like school semesters that mark milestones. Then you get a job, and it just goes.
I'd like to differ. Starting is what matters the most. Sure, starting early might be good, but you're going to be on this planet for almost 50 years or more. The best thing you could do is start and stay consistent at a pace you can keep up with rather than deal with burnout. The best of both worlds is to start early and aggressively, but a burnout really can derail years of hard work.
Story 6. Spending 3 or more hours a day on social media instead of focusing on goals and relationships.
We're wasting so much time scrolling through AI bullshit.
I'll stop doom scrolling because of this comment. Thank you.
Story 7. Living only for today and forgetting that 30-year-old you is going to want some freedom. Not having goals in your 20s makes your 30s feel like a trap. Story 8. They think they have time. You don't have to have everything figured out, but your 20s aren't infinite if you're only spending time just vibing.
I hate that saying. You have all the time in the world. No, you don't. It will pass faster than you think.
Story 9. Not saving for retirement. Even $10 a week can make a difference. Little did I know, now that I'm approaching retirement age, that it could have been so much better. I could have retired by now. Story 10. Feeling that their life is miserable because they don't have everything they want.
Ugh, this hit hard. I definitely am guilty of not being grateful for what I've accomplished so far.
Story 11. Getting themselves into high-interest debt. Compound interest is two things, and two things only. Something that creates long-term wealth or pure evil. Story 12. Not saving money. Starting your retirement savings in your early 20s versus your 30s is the difference between retiring a millionaire or not. Story 13. Marrying the wrong person. It wasted 10 years of my life and cost me hundreds of thousands of pounds in the divorce. I just wish I'd listened to my mother from the beginning. Story 14. Partying too hard. I've seen friends who never stopped, and by their late 20s or early 30s, they're going to want to turn everything around real fast, or feel the need to settle down with the wrong person, thinking it'll fix them. Story 15. Children. It also happens to be the best mistake, but still, very few people are actually ready for kids until their 30s. Story 16. Not the most significant, but a root cause of a lot of issues. Getting weak or fat. Story 17. Getting into debt for things other than a house. Not investing in their 401k or IRA. Story 18. Thinking they have time. You don't. So start. Whatever it is, just start. Don't wait. Just start. What are you waiting for? Get started. If you don't stop reading this, you'll never get started. So stop reading this and get started. Story 19. I'd say financially, people buy expensive cars that they can't afford, houses they can barely pay off, travel almost nonstop, barely save or invest, etc. My rule of thumb is, if you can't pay it twice in a row, you can't afford it. You can pay it, but you can't afford it, so don't do it. Always save up more than you spend. So, if you have $500, put $300 in savings, $100 in investments, and $100 for spending money. Don't try to impress people, they don't care. Take care of yourself first and foremost. Your health, your finances, etc. And you'll be all right. Story 20. Make a life commitment before realizing how bad it really is. Marriage, child, army, job. Story 21. Thinking they've fallen behind and rushing into huge life decisions just because they're comparing themselves to others instead of figuring out what they actually want. Story 22. Believing you're behind just because your life doesn't look like everyone else's. Story 23. Thinking that everyone else has it figured out and rushing to copy their path instead of figuring out your own. Story 24. Honestly, the biggest mistake is comparing yourself nonstop. Social media makes it look like everyone's winning except you, but half of it is fake or heavily edited. I wasted way too much energy feeling behind when I really wasn't. Story 25. Not taking good enough care of your body. Drinking and smoking and not brushing your teeth enough will catch up with you later. And the years go by a lot faster than you think they will. Story 26. Caring too much. Just fucking live. You're only in your 20s for 10 years. Go wild, fuck pussy, drink a beer with your friends, go on trips you maybe can't afford. Don't have regrets. Story 27. Getting married and having kids. A 20-something doesn't have the capacity to choose the right partner. This from someone who used to be 20. Story 28. Not putting 15% of your income into your retirement plan. You probably aren't making that much anyway. Compound interest is your best friend, and once you do start making decent money, that 15% adds up fast. Story 29. They're living like they'll never make it past their 30s. Most of us die in our 70s. Life will suck if you don't have money at that age. Story 31. If you didn't experience heartbreak in grade school and didn't get your first one until your 20s, you can spiral because you're surprised people can be heartless jerks. You don't want to work, eat, or anything like that. 2. Not saving money. Even $20 every paycheck adds up. It's about building the habit.
Yeah, so many people I know are horrible at saving money. You don't have to buy something every time you go outside. If you're going on a day trip, Packing some lunch instead of eating out saves you so much in the long run. Cancel subscriptions you aren't using too. And lastly, a big one in today's day and age is a lot of people are always scrolling and buying unnecessary things online.
Story 31. Reminiscing about the past. Brother, if you don't live in the present, you'll have nothing to look back on in your 30s and beyond. Also, credit card debt. Story 32. Planning for an early retirement. It sucks to have to work until you're almost 70. Story 33. Not making any serious plans for their lives. If you're 30 and you still have no goal to work toward, you might end up in a downward spiral. Story 34. Choosing horrible but fun romantic partners, blowing money on bullshit but fun things, and not investing more. Story 35. Because they grew up in an era of a once-in-a-lifetime athlete, they somehow feel entitled to championships. Too soon? Story 36. These days, families are struggling to make ends meet. If you actually paid attention and bring new life into the world knowing full well you can't feed them, that's being irresponsible. You can't assume everyone grew up the same way and say, hey, I grew up this way and that's how I'm going to raise my kid. Because in reality, a lot of people didn't come from loving homes. Story 37. Not saving enough and also not spending enough money on themselves to enjoy life. Story 38. Focus on meeting certain milestones at certain ages, instead of saying fuck it and living life before settling down. Story 39. Not saving any money. Even if you can only save $50 to $100 a month, it's better than nothing. Even better if you can put that money in an account that invests in an index fund. Story 40. Thinking your 20s are supposed to be one thing or the other. Everyone does it differently, and nobody is wrong in how they do it. Everyone is just doing their best with what they have. Story 41. I fucked up my credit in my 20s. In college, they literally offered a free pizza for signing up for a credit card. I was a naive, broke college kid and basically maxed it out without understanding how brutal credit card interest is. That limited me from a lot of things shortly thereafter. Story 42. Driving under the influence. How many dead bodies do we need to see before we get the point? How much jail time and probation do we need to hear about it to make it stick? Story 43. Thinking that their life will end at 30 or should be resolved in some capacity by then. Story 44. Thinking they have unlimited time, ignoring their health, finances, and relationships because of it. Story 45. Within weeks of getting my first full-time job, I went to one of those buy here, pay here, no credit, zero down car dealerships and picked up a really overpriced car at high interest. It made me feel trapped throughout most of my 20s, but it was a valuable, albeit expensive, lesson. Story 46. Thinking that they need to have everything figured out, and when you hit 30 that your life or time magically slips away. You have your whole life ahead of you. I hear a lot of people say that your 30s are better than your 20s. Story 47. Not deciding where they ultimately want to live before getting married or having kids. Story 48. Buying expensive cards that they cannot afford just to show off in front of their friends who are also in debt. Story 49. There are so many terrible mistakes out there, but one that's super common is just sort of giving up. After graduating school and floundering without direction, not taking care of themselves, not planning for the future, not living intentionally, just existing and buying into nonsense about how just surviving is enough, or pretending their laziness is burnout or using some self-diagnosed mental disorder as a crutch. This drives so many of the other mistakes like settling for a bad partner, not saving or managing their finances, sliding into alcoholism or another addiction, wasting time and opportunities, and so on. Story 50. Poor financial responsibility, not saving for retirement, getting married, and having kids. Story 51. Babies. I am convinced every other thing can be overcome, aside from having more lives to be responsible for other than your own. Babies are now reserved for later in life. Of course, women have a much shorter runway for doing that than us guys. Story 52. Most people in their 20s, not thinking out of the box, stick to one thing in their life, while our 20s are actually meant for us to experience a lot of things. Change your major, change your job, volunteer more. It's not just about partying and having fun. It's about building personality and a future that your future self will thank you for. Story 53. Don't lean on their parents when they can stand on their own. You don't have to make a name for yourself right away by living in an expensive city, in an expensive apartment. Stay home and look into similar work opportunities nearby. Story 54. I didn't lock in. I feel like I wasted my 20s and my physical prime by not going after what I truly wanted. Story 55. Avoid getting into debt and start investing. Any little bit counts, especially when you're young, thanks to the compounding effect. Story 56. I was thinking that if something is making money now, it will make money forever. I spent my 20s building a software product that made $461,000, and I just assumed the growth would never stop. I never thought about what happens when the market shifts. Now I'm basically starting over. Build something sustainable, not just something profitable. Story 57. Wasting time doing literally nothing or living your life for other people. Make sure you chase after your own dreams and work to make the things you want in your life come true. Take some chances and opportunities to do things that may not come around again. You don't want to get to your 30s or 40s feeling like you wasted your 20s because you were waiting for the right time, or were too scared, or figured you could just do it some other time. Basically, don't forget to live because you're too busy working all the time or too busy being a follower or thinker instead of the main character in your own life or actually taking action on things. Also, not being in the habit of exercising regularly. If you start young, your body will especially thank you for a regular, consistent exercise routine when you get into your 40s and beyond. Story 58. Not putting small amounts of money every month into an investment that compounds. Story 59. Not saving anything. Buying a sports car before a house. In this economy, moving out. But it's tough because some locations don't have jobs unless you're working remotely. Story 60. You're not thinking long-term. You need to take care of your health now. You need to start investing in a 401k or other retirement savings accounts now. Story 61. Thinking they're too late to make things happen. No one is in more of a hurry than someone reaching their 30s. Story 62. Credit cards. If I can advise anyone on anything, don't ever get one. One turns into three and so on. Just save and invest your money. I'm still paying stuff off. I wish I'd never gotten credit cards. Story 63. Not taking care of your health and body. You feel invincible in your early 20s. But the wear and tear from bad posture, zero exercise, and a terrible diet starts to send the bill in your 30s. It's much easier to maintain health than to try and win it back later. Story 64. Buying a car that's too expensive for their first one, and barely or not having a nest egg in case it's needed. Story 65. Focusing on getting paid instead of building useful skills. Your 20s are a time to set up a strong base for the rest of your career and life. Skipping the work to try to make a couple of bucks early on is setting yourself up for a fall. That being said, if you can do both, power to you. Story 66. Taking out 6-digit student loan debt to better themselves. I'm not sure I will ever forgive myself for going to law school. Story 67. Getting married too young and going to college just because you thought you had to. Story 68. Pressuring themselves to become something or to achieve great things by this or that age before turning 30. Story 69. Number 1. Doing addictive drugs, including nicotine. Number 2. Not graduating from college. Number 3. Getting married before graduating from college. Number 4. Having kids before marriage. Story 70. Don't make any decisions that will control or constrain the rest of your life. You don't even know yourself yet. Story 71. Being naive and believing everyone had my best interests at heart. I trusted the wrong people and it cost me everything. Story 72. College. Not taking advantage of certain opportunities that clearly present themselves, job connections, people connections, and so on. Making a savings account. Making a brokerage account for mutual index funds. Story 73. Not making a plan to pay their bills in full each month. Also, not investing in a 401k, etc. I didn't start until I was 35. Now I'm 50, and I regret it. Story 74. Thinking that a relationship will magically work out and you'll be forever respected for the effort you put in. Then, when your partner ups and leaves, you're left in bewilderment and shock that relationships can have such a brutal ending. It's a tough lesson to learn. Story 75. Not starting a private pension or an individual savings account of some form and paying into it from their very first paycheck. Sounds boring as fuck, but when you're 25, you'll be grateful you did. Story 76. Not realizing how long life lasts. The opportunities, decisions, and choices you make later in life are just as meaningful and important as those you make when you're younger. Story 77. Staying in situations that you don't really like because they're good enough. Story 78. Opening predatory lines of credit to get a frisbee or a tote bag on college campuses. Story 79. Getting married young because they feel they have to, not because they want to. Also, because they believe that being married will change their partner for the better. Story 80. Not trying enough things. The 20s are made for experimenting with new things, traveling to new places, and meeting new people. All kinds of things, places, and people. Story 81. One thing I did in my 20s that, if I could go back and change, is that I relied too much on living with romantic partners. I should have just found a normal-ass roommate. It's so painful to separate from a partner, then mix the stress of housing on top of it. I don't know. Story 82. Having kids too early or getting married. Not investing your savings. Building credit on small things early. Taking out loans you're not ready for. Whatever vices you get into in your 20s will probably stick with you for a while. Drinking, partying, drugs, and so on. Story 83. Falling for that old line of, do what you love. Sometimes life isn't that romantic, and you need to do what makes financial sense. Story 84. Drugs. Because they think they're invincible. I lost way too many friends in my 20s because they thought they were bulletproof. Story 85. People don't save money in their first job. Usually you have no debts, so you could save a lot of money. Story 86. Ignoring your health and exercise. I know that many of us feel invincible in our youth, but you build a foundation for your physical well-being in old age during your youth. Sad to say, I am largely guilty of this myself. Trust me, it's tough to get in shape when you start late. Please don't be like me. Story 87. Invest heavily in their retirement fund. Go hard early. This cannot be stressed enough. Gains are compounded, and time is your friend here. Never put it off to next year. Story 88. Falling in love without an end goal in mind for the relationship. What a waste of my 7 years. Story 89. They're using their energy narrowly. All in on relationships, work, fun, or hobbies. Later on, you realize that balance is key, and the whole idea that one helps you get the other is bullshit without putting in effort. Story 90. I think mine was financing a car I couldn't afford. Monthly payments can and will leave you pinching every penny you can. Story 91. Working out their passion and finding the career type they will want. I suppose it starts from leaving school. We were doing our university applications at the start of final year. I had great grades, but no idea what actually interested me or what the world of work really looks like. I went into university because it was the path we were pushed into. 8 years of studying, 3 different degrees tried, 2 completed, and 10 years in a career I'm learning is just not right for me. Let's not talk about the student loans. I've read a lot about financial literacy and not wasting your 20s, but I also think there's a balance. Not overdoing it after school just to be seen achieving and following the norm, especially if you don't know who you are yet. I often wish I'd taken time before or after university, before jumping straight into a professional career pathway, to work out who I am, what interests me, what my values are, and so on. I think there's incredible value in that, and I have many regrets myself. I encourage others not to be like me. Story 92. Not respecting your body and beating it to shit with partying and rough living. Catches up to you in your later years. Story 93. They start smoking as soon as they reach the legal drinking age and begin going to bars. Story 94. Binge drinking. Most people aren't smart enough to sacrifice any mental acuity. Hold on to it. Story 95. thinking it'll always be like this and they'll be young forever. You won't, don't waste it. Think and work toward your future. Story 96. Outside of really detrimental things, it's keeping up with the Joneses. I've always had a good salary, but I have a few friends who make a ton of money, like $200,000 or more, and their wives making six figures on top, before they even hit 30 in low cost of living areas. Seeing their houses almost made me make a really stupid decision to buy a house that would have made me extremely house poor. Story 97. Prioritizing anything more than their education. Settling in relationships. Getting caught in the comparison trap. Story 98. Drifting through life without building direction. Thinking you have endless time. Story 99. Being scared of risk or taking life too seriously. I spent my 20s working hard, saving hard, and not having as much fun as I should have. Your 20s are for mistakes, living, and learning. I wish I had traveled more, tried more things, and taken life less seriously. That doesn't mean you should shrug off responsibility and develop a drinking problem. There is a balance. You should work hard and then reward yourself with those big dreams. You might think you can do it later, but you never know what life has in store. I got a good job, and instead of taking some bucket list trips, I saved aggressively. I turned down hanging out with friends because it cost too much. That did allow me to start life with some security and buy a home, but now that I'm settled in life, I wish I had seen more of the world before starting a family and losing that ability. Story 100. Anything that will hurt you the rest of your life. Don't rack up debt. Don't get a criminal record. Beyond that, there's not much else in the way of irreparable mistakes. Ideally, you set yourself up for a career that's not going to destroy your body. Start investing in retirement. Story 101. Thinking that life is a race, and they're already behind because they haven't figured everything out yet or haven't already accomplished X, Y, or Z. Story 102. Rushing to do things just because others do, or thinking you'd be able to live the way you live into your 40s and 50s. Story 103. Not investing what they can into the market. Even a little bit compounds into large sums of money in 40 to 50 years. Story 104. Letting your whole world revolve around a relationship and not focusing on yourself. I made this mistake in my 20s, and I wish I had just focused on myself. Story 105. Getting a credit card, having kids, not finishing college, not saving money, ignoring their health, getting married too young, abusing their bodies with substances and alcohol, not starting to plan for their future, spending too much money, taking out loans or financing stuff, not working on themselves, and just jumping from one relationship to the next. Story 106. I'm in my 20s, and I hate to say it, but my biggest flaw is constantly feeling like I'm running out of time to do the things I want to do, yet doing nothing about it except stressing myself out. Story 107. Thinking you have to have everything figured out by a certain age, instead of letting yourself grow and change.
Story 108. Ne pas tout donner pour construire une belle carrière et se cultiver, plutôt que de sortir pour boire et faire la fête constamment.
Story 109. They think they have to get it all done, and so they put up with things they shouldn't. Story 110. Committing suicide. Your 20s fucking suck. Especially if you grew up in a home where you didn't leave the nest with any financial or emotional support. No college, no goals, no direction. Starting at the bottom just to pay for the basics and not be some loser at your parents' house in your hometown. It gets dark. Real dark. And the darkness doesn't go away forever. But I promise to anyone considering closing the book on their life, things get better as you get into your 30s. Yeah, your body gets more worn down, but the things that used to just eat at you constantly suddenly don't wear you down so much. You realize not every human being is supposed to be some great success, achieve all the goals, and be who you wish you were in your mind's eye. It's totally okay to be normal. Promise. Story 111. Comparing timelines also makes people rush bad decisions just to keep up. Wrong job because it pays now. Wrong relationship because everyone else is settling down. Wrong lifestyle because it looks successful from the outside. Your 20s aren't a race, they're a calibration phase. Most people who look ahead are just louder about it, not necessarily happier or more stable. The real mistake isn't being behind. It's locking yourself into something that takes 10 years to undo just to feel on time for 6 months. Story 112. Bad habits. Most people don't think about it at the time. You think you have all the time in the world. I'll only drink while in college. Life happens. You get older. You want to make changes, but discipline is difficult. You had a stressful day at work. Just some wine, and tomorrow I'll fix it. Bad habits are perpetual if you don't step up. Story 113. I think the worst has to be not realizing how powerful investing is, or not finding out about buying assets that will generate wealth for you rather than liabilities that will drain it. But I may just be projecting here. Story 114. Not keeping their favorite personal videos on their online vault to avoid scrolling and losing precious time. Story 115. You are young and life is long, and there is time to kill today. And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one told you when to run, you missed the starting gun. Story 116. Spending every dollar you earn. If you don't set some aside for retirement now, you will always be working. Story 117. Fucking up your credit. I'm 33 now with a good paying job that I've had for 6 years, and finally I'm looking to buy a house. Took years to fix that shit. Story 118. Spending money like crazy. I should have been saving. I could be more financially set up today if I had. Story 119. You're probably thinking you're late or behind compared to everyone else. Social media makes it feel like people have it all figured out at 22. But most of that is fake or temporary. I see friends rushing into things just because they look popular or successful right now. It feels like patience and not panicking would save a lot of stress. Story 120. Not saving money. I understand that everybody's circumstances are different and it's not always possible, but even if it's just $20 a week put aside, that's over $1,000 in a year. Story 121. Too many to list, but my biggest regret is not saving for retirement earlier. I graduated from college after the crash of '87, so I was hesitant to invest. Back then, you also didn't really have the 401k industry that exists today. They existed as financial instruments, but I didn't know how they worked, and no one told me about them. My parents were affluent, but Dad ended up dying in his late 50s, and my housewife mom ended up nursing the life insurance money and home equity into her 80s, living frugally. I started saving in my late 30s and made some stupid stock picks, selling Apple early. But if I'd had the mechanisms in place today to maximize employer contributions to my 401k, or merely automatic savings and deductions, I'd be in a different place. Although I'm saved by marrying up too. Story 122. I think there's a strange mix of feeling like you're super confident about some things and clueless about others. However, sometimes you've overestimated how much you know about some things and underappreciated the things you think you're clueless on. Not sure how you're supposed to get past that beyond aging and more life experience, which is, in itself, a bit of a cliché. I suppose I wish I was less harsh on myself and more open to listening in some areas. Story 123. Don't be self-conscious. You effortlessly look the best you may ever look. You can still look great after your 20s, but it's usually because of lifestyle and habits. Enjoy this short period when you look good without thinking about it too much, because one day you'll have to put in effort. Alongside that, wear SPF sunscreen, develop a healthy relationship with food and exercise, and cut back or quit smoking, vaping, and drinking. If you start this in your mid to late 20s, you'll glide into your 30s looking and feeling great. Story 124. Rushing. Rushing to buy a nice car, get married, keep up with the trends, travel, and so on. Life is short and you need to live it, but make sure you grind and set yourself up to live comfortably in the future. Career changes and so on can happen, but so many of the things you do when you're young put you on a trajectory. Buy that Miata instead of the Mercedes badge. Save points and take a fun family trip instead of Europe for 3 weeks and so on. You can do so much of that after 25 to 30. Story 125. Not planning anything. If you're not planning for what you want and then putting in the work to make it happen, it's probably not going to just happen on its own. Failing to plan is planning to fail. Plan where you want to be, then set a reasonable time frame, then plan the necessary steps to get you there, then execute. No, it doesn't guarantee success, but you're more likely to accomplish what you want if you're willing to plan and then put in the work for it. Story 126. Abusing too much alcohol, being more online than in real life, and generally all sorts of addictions. I think other than that, you're fine. Choose your drug wisely, I would say. Story 127. Thinking every decision is permanent when it really isn't. People lock themselves into jobs or relationships out of panic, then spend years undoing it. It's kind of funny because you also waste time assuming you have infinite runway. Both can be true somehow. Also, I'm still using the same email from when I was 15, so clearly I didn't plan ahead either. Story 128. Not setting boundaries. It takes some maturity and assertiveness to do that, and those traits are more difficult to cultivate in your 20s compared to later in life. There's a lot of pressure to fit in and be fun. Boundaries set standards for how people treat you, which has a huge impact on your development into an adult, which is still very much happening in our 20s. Story 129. Thinking they've got enough time ahead, thereby procrastinating what needs to be done at the moment. Story 130. My aunt died painfully from organ failure caused by alcoholism yesterday. She started drinking in her 20s. Get your alcohol consumption in check early in life. Story 131. In my case, my biggest regret is living above my means when I was single and had no kids. I was thinking, I'll get out of the hole later when I progress in my career. If I had kept that money and done something smart with it, instead of renting a bachelor pad, traveling, shopping for things I didn't need, and going out every weekend, now that I have a family, I wouldn't be worried about bills all the goddamn time. Sure, I make much more money now, but the added financial load of a family has vastly outpaced my higher income. I'm not in crippling debt right now, but I would 100% be in a much better place. I'd have a nicer house, drive a better car, and be able to take my family on vacation more often, and so on. Story 132. Casual unprotected sex. I know a few people who had unwanted pregnancies in their 20s. Most of them had the kids and loved their kids, but still, that wasn't the plan. I know more than a few people who had a sexually transmitted infection or two as well. I swear to God, unprotected sex is getting out of hand. Story 133. This is a difficult question. Part of me wishes I didn't settle down, get married, and build a house in my 20s. I feel like I should have been living life and figuring myself out, so I could be more successful later in life. By age 31, I felt like I had everything I wanted and still so much potential. That potential never materialized. Tragedy happened, depression happened. I became bored, felt trapped balancing my needs versus my partner's. I'm still in a similar situation to when I was 31. Despite having a mostly paid-for home, I'm far less motivated and excited about the future. I kind of feel like everything will be the same repetitive pattern until I'm 80. On the other hand, I also feel like if I had made completely different choices, I'd wish I had made these choices. Story 134. Not seeking professional help for mental health-related issues. Don't let your parents guilt trip or shame you for seeking help. Story 135. I look around. Honestly, I haven't seen anyone make that sort of mistake in their 20s. By that age, we're all pretty mature and smart enough to avoid the worst kind of mistakes. I guess the worst could be thinking that you're grown, so you start bullying your parents. Then they kick you out, call the police on you, and you get sent to jail. It happened to my neighbor. They let him back in, but you can't ever live that down. Story 136. Honestly, thinking you have infinite time and that nothing really counts yet. I see so many people treating their 20s like a free trial where choices don't matter. Career moves, relationships, money, health, habits. All of that compounds way faster than you think. You don't have to have life figured out, but straight up ignoring the future because that's a problem for 30-year-old you is a brutal mistake. Ask me how I know. Story 137. When getting their first apartment, a couple, or even sometimes a single person, will get a 2-bedroom unit when they really can't afford it. Story 138. Maybe they believe that in their 20s they should already be successful, making lots of money. They want to be at the top immediately. They don't want to climb up slowly. I learned that the hard way. It's really okay to take things slowly. Story 139. They're not putting as much as they can into a pension scheme and not being financially literate about it. Story 140. Trying to be in love. Most of us have no idea what love is. In my opinion, you haven't met enough people to know if you want to spend the rest of your life with someone. Heck, some of us never do. Story 141. Things I've seen that have really tripped up friends later in life. Not building good job experience or job skills. Putting energy into relationships that are never going anywhere. Working comfortable jobs. Maintaining college mindsets. Worrying about friend group pressures. Friend groups rarely exist after people start having babies. Story 142. You will most likely still fail and be poor no matter how hard you work, how good your grades are, or what school you go to. You can do it all right and perfectly and still lose the game.